In this session, we are going to look into the next phase of the SPX intervention or the SPX functioning, and that is developing and prioritizing opportunities. I think we must remind ourselves that up to now, the first 3 sessions, we were looking at the introductory part, in other words, the background of the SPX. Then we looked at the identifying of opportunities as an initial stage in the very important part of the process. And we also had a look at acquiring the opportunities. Now, after identifying the opportunities, we must now, through the SPX program, attempt to acquire them, in other words, to get them into our realm and to get those opportunities into the SPX process. The outline of this session, we will be looking at analyzing buyer needs. We must analyze and see what the needs of the buyers are. Otherwise, we are not going to be matching effectively. We're going to look at the quantifying the opportunities, the quantifying referring to value and volume. Value of the products and the volumes. In fact, it should actually be the other way around, volumes and value, but those go together. Then we're going to prioritize the buyer opportunities. Very important part in prioritizing opportunities. As we said in the previous session, very important that we do not just shoot in the air. We don't just run around and just try and find opportunities wherever we see something that may look like an opportunity. We must be very focused. The fourth point of the outline, what we're going to discuss, is the further investigation, interrogation of opportunities. Now, if we prioritize buyer opportunities, there is a next step. We have to investigate further because there may be things that we miss as we prioritize the opportunities. Now, the first topic that we are going to discuss, analyzing the buyer needs. The process of buyer development through the stages. In this instance, I want to be very clear that there is a diagram which will be made available to the learners, and that would be shown in the study material. Now, it is called an SPX Supplier Matchmaking Program Framework. Very briefly, I'm not going to explain it in detail, it will be available for the learners, is that we will have a supply side and a demand side. On the supply side would be all the suppliers lined up, the supply development processes, the institutions and the agencies and the organizations that are involved in suppliers and in identifying suppliers. And then on the other side, there is the demand side where the needs of buyers are very clearly indicated. The demand side on this diagram should depict the needs of the buyers, which we have just alluded to. Coming back again to the government's very important and pivotal role in the SPX program. Government's demands, they demand to state-owned procurement. They have demands on state-owned procurement, and as we also in the past said, that state-owned procurement is indirect and direct. Direct is government specifically, the government that is buying and sourcing. Indirect is through agencies and organizations that they have a stake in. The state-owned enterprises obligations. The state-owned enterprises have obligations towards government. Government are very strict on those obligations, and they are always monitoring the state-owned enterprises obligations and whether they meet them or how they meet them, and they assist them through, for instance, the SPX program to meet their obligations. Now, state-owned enterprises, as we said, has been mentioned many times, and state-owned enterprises are the main delivery agent of government spend. Now we get to the actual first topic, the aspects related directly to the first topic, and that is the requirements of the buyer's needs. Now, what we've done is to divide these requirements into hard and soft requirements. Now, you would probably think in your minds at the moment that that is quite clear, that hard and soft requirements are quite clear and very distinctive. But it's not always so clear-cut. But let us look at that, and let us investigate hard and soft requirements. Now, the hard requirements of a buyer would be obviously very important. The first one would be the product specifications. We all know, if we talk about matchmaking, if we look at buyers, if we interrogate the buyers, if we investigate buyers' needs and the buyer themselves, the profile of the buyer, the product specification is crucial. There must be a competitive price. The pricing usually, as we all know, in any commercial endeavor, any commercial process, the competitiveness is very important on the pricing. That is in many instances where a lot of these projects and processes go awry. And that is where the SPX can play a major role in mitigating, coordinating, and investigating possibilities where the buyer and the supplier could actually meet on a good price. Order sizes, these are absolutely important, this is a very important point. The sizes of the order would, in many instances, determine whether you will find suppliers. The suppliers would mostly, in many cases, they would respond to large orders. Small orders, we must be very clear, yes, we do get small orders with very high values. That is high value products. That is a fact which in many instances is not, or is mislooked, or is missed. Lead times. Now lead times can become a major problem. For instance, we had people in one of the countries that on an inward buying mission, where they came to the country to instigate or to investigate business opportunities. They wanted to supply, or they wanted to supply to the South African market, or to the South African market. In this case, that example is the South African market. And they have obviously had to look at lead times, and right in the beginning and right in the start of the negotiations, they did say to the supplier that it would take around about 1 year for the prototypes. So it is very important that right from the beginning, right from the start of the negotiations, the supplier must know what the lead times are, and if the prototypes, which obviously is the first step in many instances for products on a larger volume, you would be happy as a supplier to adhere to those needs, because prototypes can be the first step for the supplier to get involved in the buying opportunities. Delivery logistics, we know the logistics can be a problem. The exporting, the transport, invariably big challenges on delivery logistics. Let's talk about the soft requirements. Now, many people could maybe reason and argue that these may not be so soft. As trade develops, as time goes on, in the modern era of trade in the world, there are a number of aspects behind the, let's say, the tangibles, as we mentioned on the hard side, that are becoming more and more important, and many people could reason that these soft requirements may become hard requirements as well. Quality certification. We all know quality certification or quality is non-negotiable. People don't even ask about quality anymore. Obviously, there must be quality certificates in place, but the people, if they negotiate, they accept that quality is in place. Shareholding. Who are the shareholders of the buying company? In certain countries where there is an element of affirmative action, for instance, in some of the developing countries where people that have not been part of the mainstream economy, where there is a number of measures placed, obligations placed on these companies to have shareholding of people that were not part of the mainstream economy in the past. So the affirmative action and empowerment aspect comes into play, which is very, very, very important. Fair trade, we know that the trade practices are looked into more and more by suppliers, buyers. The suppliers are being placed under more and more scrutiny regarding trade practices, especially for exports. We know that, for instance, in Europe, the trade requirements are very stringent in many instances. Quality, sustainability, which we will be mentioning as well as part of the session. Sustainability becoming a very important part of trade, and your fair trade practices also significant. Environmental certifications. Environment is becoming very, very openly significant in any trade. As an example, if you are exporting a certain product or you are supplying a certain product to a buyer who may be a multinational, there may be stringent measures and obligations on you as a supplier to adhere to environmental practices, which goes very closely with labor, social practices, sustainability. The old triple bottom line, as they called it, the labor practices in many countries is under scrutiny. Social practices outside of the business, for instance, how are you treating and what are you doing? What are the measures that are put in place for the social and the community aspects and the community around or surrounding your business, in the vicinity of the business? We know that big organizations, big companies, big multinationals like the Bulletins of this world, they do have very clear obligations regarding looking after the communities surrounding their factories, or surrounding their smelters, and surrounding their operations within certain geographical limits. Sustainability, we're not only talking about sustainability of the business, in other words, how long it will be able to do business or how long it will do business financially and economically, but also the sustainability of the environmental and also other aspects of sustainability, of looking after aspects before, in other words, the ones that we mentioned before: sustainability, environmental, labor, social. Quantifying opportunities. Now quantifying the opportunities is a very important process, because there we see and we can get an idea of the value and the volume of this opportunity. There is a diagram for tracking the matchmaking process. It's a tool that is used. People all over the world can use their own tools. It is also one of those tools that you don't need to adhere to a specific format. It gives a description of the opportunity. It's important. We can't look at opportunities if we don't know what the physiology of the opportunity. The buyer's name, then the opportunity validation is the next piece of information. I would like to just go back to the previous slide. If we talk about the diagram for tracking the matchmaking process, this is now a further development after, remember, we spoke about the opportunity, the pipeline tracker. The pipeline, the opportunity pipeline tool was just a number of opportunities or groups of opportunities or possibilities that could be taken further and that could be looked into. But in this case, it's a tool that gives you more flesh, more information. At the end of that, you can see and get a good idea of what these opportunities, what they look like and how valuable they are, and it gives an indication of the validation. It gives a validation of the opportunity. So yes, the headlines would be description of an opportunity, the buyer's name. Then there's the opportunity validation aspect. Was a meeting held with a buyer? That gives you an indication that there's been an engagement. The list of the components. A business case. Was there a business case? Remember we spoke about a business case. Is there a business case in this specific opportunity? Then there's a heading, the matchmaking process. In other words, now we look into engagements between the buyers and the suppliers. Is there a short list of suppliers? Has a shortlist already been derived? Is there a final shortlist? Has the shortlist been presented to the buyer? Non-disclosure agreement, it gives an indication, has there been a interaction between the supplier and the buyer regarding protecting the IP? It is just an indication for the SPX to know so that we can follow up should there be any disputes. A request for quotes. Was there a request for quote? Now the request for quote is an absolutely vital. That is at the end of the day where we want to be. For instance, the opportunity specialist of the SPX, he is measured or she is measured on how many RFQs have been issued. Quantification, buyer's decision, that is now also part of the tool where information is given. The buyer's decision, number of components, quantities, monetary value, and the buyer obligations, if any. In many instances, there may not be an obligation. Government may not have put an obligation on buyers. The monetary value and the number of components, the quantities, is crucial. Prioritizing the buyer opportunities. Now, prioritizing buyer opportunities is critical to the whole process. As we will see, there is also a tool that was devised in the SPX that I was involved, or I am involved in. And again, this is something that could be designed in many different ways. What we have done on the SPX opportunity prioritizing it was to depict the following. I just want to explain why we should have prioritizing. It is to give the SPX office or the program, the process, impetus and effectiveness so that we work in an orderly fashion. If we go back to what we said earlier, in just running all over the place and finding opportunities that may not realize is very time consuming, and it is dangerous because we will be using time and unnecessary time and losing time, and we will be wasting time. Now the prioritizing is just to make it easier for the buying opportunity specialist of the SPX to concentrate on those opportunities that have been identified and that have been seen as soon to be and that are realistic. So the information that we depict on that tool, the tool will also be shown and it will also be available to the learners in the study material and on the website. It gives us, number one, the vendor or the buyer. Let's be very clear here. It says buyer A or B or C. It gives the opportunity. It says locomotives, 95 locomotives. In this case, for instance, locomotives, the vendor would be the government A's transport or the transport service, the railway service of that government. And it would say, for instance, so many locomotives. Progress is the next heading on the tool of prioritizing. Engagement. Have we engaged with the buyer? Well, one would ask the question, if it's prioritized, it doesn't mean that you've already engaged with the buyer. You would have intelligence and information as the SPX, and you would know that this opportunity is imminent or has already been contracted, and it's something that one can realistically get to a matchmaking situation. Have we identified suppliers in this process? We've engaged with buyers now. We have to tell the buyer, and we must be quite sure that we have suppliers lined up. It may happen that we don't have suppliers yet. And the engagement with the buyer would then start the process of finding the suppliers. What is the contracting process? This is not whether there's a contract already. It could be, but what is the contracting process? Is it in process? Has there been some contracting taken place? Or is it not even clear? Or is it hasn't even started? So let's rather get the sequence right to say hasn't started, the contracting, and the second one would be in process, and the third one would be contracting is taking place. Now, if we link these bullet points, we say engagement with buyers, idea of suppliers, then the contracting would probably be imminent. If we say engagement with buyers, yes, idea of suppliers in progress or not done yet, then contracting obviously is not there yet, and it will still take some time. And then there's a time frame which gives us some sort of an idea of how long this process will be taking. If we say engagement with buyers has taken place, idea of suppliers is in progress, or we have ID'd suppliers, contracting is in process, time frame could be 3 months. 2 months. We say engagement with buyers, yes. Idea of suppliers, no. Contracting, no. Time frame, unknown. So what we've done, what did we do? We went further and we said, let us color code, just to make it easier, because we all know that human beings think in pictures and colors. And this is something that we devised to make it easier and at a glance to see what are the priorities and how can we manage these priorities. It depicts mainly the time frame expected for RFQs and knowledge of buyers and suppliers. If we go back, it is really to investigate those 4 progress elements. So let's look at green. We said green, in progress or up to 3 months. Short time period. In progress could mean it could mean we have met with the buyer, the suppliers are known, they are engaging, we know who the suppliers are, and the time frame is up to 3 months. That is an opportunity ready to pick. In other words, to use the old cliche, it's a low-hanging fruit. And that is something to be pushed. We have to push that and work hard on it. The main contractors and the OEMs known, and they have engaged. That gives the answer which I've just alluded to previously. So it means that the buyer and the supplier are very close to working with each other. But in this case, the main contractors, OEMs, known and engaged. In other words, SPX have spoken to the buyer. The suppliers are known. Yellow, more than 3 months, up to 1 year. This is arbitrary. This could change, because remember, this tool and this prioritizing tool is dynamic. It is something that changes all the time. A yellow scenario could suddenly become a green scenario within a week. So it changes, and it is dynamic, and one must track that and look at it very carefully and use it on an ongoing basis. Not all contractors or OEMs or suppliers are known. And red, unknown and or more than a year. We're talking about unknown, we're saying that the buyers and suppliers are unknown. Well, there's a very important point where we must be very careful. The buyers are known, but they haven't been engaged. And suppliers have not been lined up yet. And this is, for instance, an opportunity which is in the pipeline, on your pipeline. Remember, we spoke about the pipeline. But it is still far off. It is very vague, but it is an opportunity it's a priority. We know that it's going to happen. We know that it's something that SPX has to get involved in. So we're tracking it and we're looking at it slowly but surely as a case at hand which can realize and that we have to work on as a priority. Buyers, suppliers are unknown. That gives us an idea of how we could manage opportunities. I want to reiterate that in the SPX program, to manage opportunities is probably the deciding factor in the functioning and in the success of the SPX. The last aspect which we would like to explore is to look at further investigation and interrogation of opportunities. Now, after we've done and looked at the opportunity prioritization, and we have looked at developing the opportunities, we've developed them, we've come to a point where we prioritize them, there could be further investigation. Now, hubs and task teams, a hub is a group of people that are selected within a sector and they form a hub. Now, a hub is something which is there to assist a sector and a group of suppliers to interrogate, investigate with buyers and with government and with all the stakeholders that are involved to develop and to take an opportunity into its fruition. Now the hub, the whole hub, the rationale, the template will also be available in the study material. But in general, we're looking at hubs. We look at the aim of a hub. I've just given you some sort of an idea of the aim. It's to develop in a specific sector, to develop an opportunity. As a group, as an interest group, the purpose of a hub is to actually get a group of suppliers in a sector to talk to each other. It's interactive and it's interaction between suppliers. Remember in our first lesson, we spoke about the importance of inter-supplier interactions or interaction between suppliers, and then also interaction between the suppliers and the buyers. And that is where the business is taking place. The creation of a hub, there's a very specific methodology. SPX, and this is what the learner must remember, and this is important. The creation of the hub is the responsibility of the SPX. It's one of the SPX's main roles and functions. It forms the hub. If the hub succeeds, there should be matchmaking in a certain sector of a number of products or a product. It would usually be a product. An example, for instance, in a certain country, the electricity facility or utility, they wanted filter bags, and they wanted supply of filter bags, and the filter bag consists of a number of components and a number of technologies. So they got a group of people together, and those people can vary from people from the private enterprise, research and development, government, buyers, agencies, and that is all very clear in the hub as you will see it, or the rationale of the hub as you'll see it in your learning material. Participants, I'll just mention now the participants. The outputs, you are quite clear that, as I mentioned earlier, the outputs is to eventually, on a certain product or a range of products, to get matchmaking and to get the suppliers to talk to buyers so that there is business and that business happens. The obligations of the members, as any organization, because this is a little organization which is formed, they all have obligations and they have to all adhere to certain, not rules, but to certain protocols. Then the task teams, which is part of the hub can decide that they want to form task teams, because in many instances, as I said, there are different subsectors in that sector of the hub. So you have different products, and for each product in a hub scenario, you would have a task team. And they agree on membership of the task teams. The hub must decide on the membership of the task teams. And the hub exists to identify sub-focus areas for task teams to work on and to identify the required membership of the task teams. That is just a sort of a credo of the hub. And I can tell you that it is worth remembering that forming hubs is a very creative and a very effective way to assist the SPX staff to get to the success of what they want to achieve, and that is for them to come to the point of matchmaking and to get people to do business with each other on suppliers and buyers. Developing and prioritizing opportunities, we've already spoken about that, and that is just as a last, I wanted to just put that up again. Very, very important in the start of where we're really getting into that mode with the SPX, where it really shows its worth, and to assist a government and any economy to develop industrial relations, matchmaking, business, doing business, and to develop the country as a whole. Thank you.